Welcome to Talent Without Pretense. I'm Gerald Gordon, co founder of ReferenceMe. I spent years watching companies make very expensive, very preventative mistakes around how they hire and how they let people go. This show is where I sit down with HR leaders, CHROs, people executives who are actually in the room when those decisions get made. No buzzwords, no vendor pitches, just honest conversation about what's working, what's broken, and what needs to change. Let's get into it.
All right.
October, good to finally have you on. You're leading clinical operations at Central Health in Austin. You run your own coaching practice and you've got a book coming out. That's a lot of identity to be carrying all at once. I don't think that's by accident based off of our conversations. Today, I want to get into what you actually mean when you talk about finding joy without a title. So, October, I want to welcome you to the Talent Without Pretense. And why don't you share with us a little bit about your background and what you do?
Absolutely. Thank you, Gerald. I'm super excited to be here and share from my lens and my story. So I say by day, I'm an HR executive that assists with saving and changing lives in the community that I live in, supporting a wide range of clinical and administrative practices throughout the city of Austin. And then my by night job has been working on revising a chapter in a book. I'm part of a ethno-autographic compilation. So there are 9 other women authors, and we've compiled a book called The Evolution of Me. So super excited for that to launch, hard copy coming in September. And then my other soft job, but really my passion work, is I do some consulting, but not the typical career coaching consulting. It's really about career alignment. So really finding your joy without the title.
And, it's so intriguing when you say that title because I think it resonates with everyone. Some part of your career, you recognize, am I really happy here or am I just doing this for a title? So, why don't we dig into that just a little bit? When you hear that term, what comes up for you and what would you like us to understand about what that really means?
You and the audience to understand is that titles matter, right? They represent responsibility, influence, opportunities that you've been given to serve. I'm definitely proud of the title I have now as vice president. Wouldn't change it, but I also don't believe that your title should become your identity. There are opportunities. Titles are milestones, they're not destinations. So there's the opportunity to get where you want, but really assess, will I be happy there? Is that where my purpose and passion is aligned? As we know, most of us who are full time, full time for an organization or as entrepreneurs, you spend more time doing that sometimes than you do with your family. So do you want to go to a place and be miserable, or do you want to go to a place and have joy?
In some of our conversations prior, especially when you talk about your coaching clients, we always have the one side where everybody wants to climb up that ladder. They look at what the ceiling is and they want to break through that ceiling. However, in this notion of looking at titles, which is usually why, one, we want more salary, we want more money, that's obvious. But nobody really ever talks about that rat race and how it makes you feel when you're chasing something, but then you get it. And all of a sudden, it is not as great as what it looks like. So I know that we had a brief conversation about this, but can you kind of elaborate more on if you're just focusing on the title, you could be missing out on a whole bunch of other things?
You absolutely can. I shared that I had a client. They were at the senior level of their title, but absolutely miserable. They had the opportunity to take a lateral move, doing something different. However, it was also a title demotion, or that's what it appeared. So it went from senior to a non senior, still in a leadership role. And a lateral move. And they were very concerned about what will other people think. That was
Mm.
their passion to move over to that department, that team, but they kept thinking, what will I be seen like when I walk into meetings with people who I used to have an equivalent title to? And
Mm,
now it appears that I'm demoted. However, I shared the frustration of those that I was in the room with those senior titles of being burnt out, not feeling valued, not feeling seen, not feeling like it aligned with purpose. And you mentioned earlier salary, right? She was like, I'm gonna have to take a pay cut. She told herself all those things prior to even applying for that internal transfer. So I said, why don't you just go ahead and apply? You are answering a bunch of questions that you haven't posed to anyone. So she went through the process. We had some time off, came back. She was still in the process. She was like, man, I would think internally it would go much faster, but here I am still through these multiple interview phases. And then we came back and she said, I'm excited. I got a job offer for the role I want. And I said, what excites you? And you could just see the difference in knowing she was going to go do work that aligned with her. And she
mm,
said, and you know what the surprise was? The title appears to be a demotion, but I actually got an increase in pay. They're in different salaries.
hey,
So, right, it's twofold. But we talked about how we tell ourselves all those stories without ever giving it a chance, worrying about what will other people think about me? Is someone else going to say something? Will they think I was in trouble or not performing well? And got demoted. So I think it's sometimes just remembering to get out of your own head. And as you climb a ladder, I like to remind people, gets lonelier and lonelier at the top.
mm,
So if you are someone that needs tons of support, a career up might not be what you want. You might want a lateral move going in different directions to continue building your skill set.
mm. And it's see, I love these stories, right? Because they make us feel good that it almost seems like the person who was supposed to win wins. But let's be honest, sometimes it doesn't go that way. And actually losing a title because the company felt not just about you, but maybe many roles that they were purposely demoting. And so, what would you say to that perspective where a company has to make that decision and say, you know what, you were a director, but we now need to move you down to first line manager because the business not able to support you at the level that you once was at? Or we've changed titles and now the responsibilities have changed. Have you experienced any of that? And even not, what would be your thoughts in that regard? Total opposite.
Have experienced it. I've seen it firsthand. I didn't have an impact because I wasn't at the level that of the title at that time that they were, as we like to say, doing away with. We have too many levels of leadership. People sometimes think it starts at the bottom. It actually starts at the top. So
Mm,
I have seen a whole level of, all right, we're taking the vice presidents from, and I'll make up the number, right? From 10 to 2. And then there might be an opportunity for another director because that work, right, from the 10 to 2 will have to filter somewhere. So sometimes it opens up opportunities. But the reality is if I'm that vice president and there's only 2 left, so 2 are taken by internals, then I have to decide now they may add 2 director roles. Are the other 8 interested?
mm,
Is this passion work? Are they sometimes titles are ego driven, right? So I don't want to stay at this company in a
mm,
step down. I've seen people step into those opportunities and have the opportunity to move back up when the company moved in another direction. So I think it's really internally determining what's important for me.
mm,
Why I like this work. I can tell you the company I was at, if that had happened to me, I would not have stayed because it wasn't my passion work. I I
mhm.
I love nonprofit. I love healthcare and serving. That was a for profit, not healthcare. No. So for me, that would have been a no, right? It would have been like, no, I'm gonna see if I can take my gifts and talents somewhere else, especially if they're giving me the opportunity, as I say, to free up my future to do something else.
And be aligned with what your passions are. I know sometimes they say don't tell everybody to go after their passions, that they need to be thoughtful about how much they're going to make, what their future is going to look like. And it may not have to be your passion, but I do think that at some point it catches up with you if you're not working in a space where you feel good about what you're doing. So, in the midst of this, in your career time, you actually stepped away from HR, right? You spent some time and ran an ambulatory clinical operations during the pandemic.
I did.
And so, what I'd love to understand is what were some of the decisions that caused you to say, this is where I know I can provide the most impact and I want to be able to help there? Because not everybody put on the cape and actually ran towards the problem. Everybody was running away from the problem and being inside of their homes. But you decided, no, this is something that I'm going to actually run to and be part of the hero's story. I just want to say to all the people who helped us get through the pandemic, we can't say that enough. Thank you so very much. You put your life on the line. You were considered essential workers. You had to tell family members no that they couldn't visit each other in the I mean, I still remember the pain of COVID. And for you to say, hey, I'm going to jump in the fight and actually be on the front lines here, what was some of those decisions like for you at that time?
Absolutely. The org I was at, I started in HR. The pandemic actually came about 18 months after I got into my new role in operations. And part of me, there was twofold as I was thinking through my alignment, my passion. Healthcare always been my passion. And I said, okay, I'm in the people department. I have a good scope. But maybe I wanna go the operations route. So let me try it out. And my org gave me an opportunity, and I said, "If nothing else, and I return to the people space, I will have a better understanding of that business. I will have done it. I will have gained credibility. I will have a different lens to look through to be able to advise, consult." And it was interesting because prior to becoming corporate, as they say, I did direct patient care. So
Mhm.
being with patients, supporting families has always been a passion of mine. So having the opportunity to do it differently, both at a people space, but in the ambulatory operations. And I can tell you the organization I worked for during COVID, I will say they stood up and we stood up for each other
Mhm.
in a way that I hadn't seen before. With all the unknowns, the date changes, definitely the frontline team, but
Yeah.
even the senior leaders who are still trying to keep team members safe. You know, I just told someone the other day I can remember having a morning huddle at 6 a.m.,
Wow.
noon huddle, and sometimes we got new information from the CDC, or as you know, our patients were really sick. And then it was like, we need to get on a call at 8 o'clock tonight because we're trying to figure out ventilator management on getting supplies to where they need to go. So it was a very intense and memorable time, but it also helped me realize what's important. And that's why I really think you got to have joy without the title. Life
Mm.
super short. Nothing is guaranteed. And I feel fortunate, as you mentioned, you couldn't visit your loved ones in the hospital. Even as a leader, I had the opportunity to volunteer, and it's not a great job I had, but it was joyful because we had patients who were at end of life and their families could not come in, but we had iPads and they could FaceTime,
Mm.
and I've had the opportunity to do that and have a family member say, "Can you sit with my loved one and
Mm.
hold their hand as they transition?" And those are just moments that don't get replaced, but it also then brings me back to reminding myself what's important. So anyone that knows me will tell you, and I definitely used to be a title chaser in a different way. I now remind people, this job is what I do. It is not who I am.
Mm.
That's what's important. When everything else is stripped away, that patient loved one who couldn't be there because the rules said they couldn't, but just thinking through what are the things you've missed for your loved ones chasing that title? Do you have the joy and you get there and you realize, oh, I missed lots of memorable things for this title, and it's not really all it's cracked up to be.
Mm. I mean, we could probably go on this all day because it matters. And I think that this is the human part, not to bring up AI right away, but this is the human part, the stories that I love to hear because at the end of the day, we need to be humans interacting with humans. We use machines to help us, but they can't replace this feeling, this understanding that, I mean, I literally had a vision of you standing with someone and they're looking at their family members on an iPad as they transition. Like, what a powerful representation of how we can at least make things a little bit easier, even though the world around us seems like it's burning. And so thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about what your day to day is like? What is your day to day? Not necessarily what you're doing with the book just yet or the consulting, but at Central Health, like what does that look like?
Day to day, we on the people team, we start our people leadership team. So we're the people department versus HR, which was very intentional. So we went from HR to people. We went from our it can be seen as antiquated, task driven, compliance, and we really wanted to move to strategic partnership.
Mm,
So we are now people. So me and my peers who report to our chief people officer, we're all vice president or director, senior directors. We are the People Vision Council. So that's what we call ourselves versus SLT. And we have a PVC huddle every morning. So
okay.
that's how the day starts. Just saying, at each center of excellence, are you in red, yellow, green? What are some high level, what communications are coming out today? So we all have awareness and making sure our teams have awareness. What help do I need from either one of my peers on the team or someone from their team? So that's how we really start
Mm,
with our daily huddle to say, what's going on? Where are you at? Where might you need some support? So we do that daily, with the exception of once a week, we have either a 1 hour or a 2 hour meeting, depending on if it's our regular weekly meeting or our strategic meeting. Then from there, I go to what seems like tons of meetings, but they are important and impactful meetings. So I'm really fortunate. I talked a lot earlier about having credibility because I've been in operations. So there's often a first thought, I believe, that may not have happened in the past to invite the people department into meetings. So I was in a meeting today about workflow, talent acquisition reports to me, and it was about our physician recruitment process. My guess is in the past, TA would have been an afterthought, right? Or the people department. There would have been all who they really believe are the key stakeholders. People department made the offer they're done, but they really wanted our perspective. Did we have the same pain points? Did they have our workflow
mm,
correct as we're working through improvements? We're in the continuous improvement cycle. But what I appreciated is I was at the table cross functionally
mm,
nursing, provider services, our clinical integration team. So it was really nice to be invited, but to hear that everyone respected everyone's perspective on how to move forward. And there was even a point which I thought, I don't know that I would have seen this 5 or 10 years ago, where someone said, someone's not in the room
mm,
that needs to make that decision. We need to loop them in. And
mm,
I really appreciated that. So I think we do a great job at collaborating. So then the rest of my day is really spent designing strategy. So we have a different fiscal year here. So I can tell you something I'm doing right now, which is October 1st through September 30th. So we're in our fourth quarter now. We are rounding out the year. And last year, I spent a lot of time for my leaders. I called it the year of enablement. They all got some leadership development opportunities and other things. And then this year, I'm moving forward with what I'm calling our blueprint. So, being more specific, we're going to have a leadership summit next month.
okay.
Following month, I will take what comes out of that leadership summit, and so I can connect even to my indirect team members. I will meet for 30 minutes with everyone on our team to ask some more pointed questions and start sharing our objectives and key results for the next fiscal year with them to get input, see if we missed anything because they go in effect October 1st. And then we will work on executing. So I am super excited about moving in that direction. So recently, I've been actually designing the workshops and the things that are going to happen in a couple of weeks and really spent time thinking through where were the gaps and how can I continue to allow my team to grow, be strategic, and be the first point of contact that a leader will say, I need to reach out to the people department.
Mm,
They are my strategic partners, not just when something goes wrong, but they're involved and invested in the business just like I am.
I love that. See, this is innovation at its core, right? Changing the perspective of just being available, kind of like when something goes wrong, but now being proactive. So this is what that looks like. We hear from a VP in the healthcare space actually putting the dots together and connecting with people. And I love the changing from not only dealing with compliance and not only dealing with the structure from that perspective, but what can we do to support our team members? And I absolutely love that. Thank you for sharing your day to day. I'm sure there are many VPs or directors or senior leaders who will want to go in that space. And it just gives you a view of what that looks like. And I don't believe you get that everywhere. So thank you for being honest and sharing that with us.
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna I'm gonna jump right into your because I think it's fascinating that you have started to think about how you can even help more people by bringing together 9 other women to actually share information about their stories and things like that. Now, let me tell you how unselfish that is, right? Because a lot of people write books and they're writing about from their perspective or the things that they've experienced. But you decided to bring in 9 other women with you. Help me understand that decision. And then, what is this book about?
Absolutely. So first I want to clarify. I was brought in by an amazing queen. So she had that vision. Dr. Ronika Briscoe, she has her own business. She's an entrepreneur. And we are the second installment of this evolution of me. It's actually in relentless pursuit. The first book was titled The Unicorn Effect. The second book is Evolution of Me. And what has been amazing about it is we are Black leaders, educators. We have a three-time Emmy Award winning personality that has a story in the book. But what is the best is we are talking about our lived experiences. We didn't have any parameters other than tell me about something you evolved with. And I'm
Mm,
not going to give a lot away on the book, but when we went to our writer's retreat, I thought I can share this because it didn't end up there. I thought I was going to be writing about, imposter syndrome
mm,
and still being in the midst of evolving from that. And actually during the retreat and as I wrote my chapter, I evolved. So it's very different perspectives from all 9 authors, all very successful and amazing women in their own right in multiple industries, but it was just interesting how we all came together and really want to ensure I think what readers will get out of this book and what I got out of the first one is you're not alone. Sometimes you think you're alone. You're absolutely not alone. A question I get is it for women? I don't know that it's for women, but we want men to be allies. So absolutely, you should have a perspective. Yes, this is Black women's lived experiences. So not just for Black women. Someone else can read it as well if you
yeah.
want to have a different perspective. If you are a leader, if you are a leader of Black women, I'd recommend reading this again just to understand what those lived experiences might be like that you don't get to experience because you show up differently in the workplace.
I love that. And I think I can see how people can define and grow themselves as they go through the experience of writing, right? A lot changes and you pour onto that paper and that canvas about who you are and things like that. And all of a sudden, you start redefining some things in your own life
Absolutely. Unexpectedly.
unexpectedly. All right. So let me jump into a different topic. So you mentioned that you have TA now and under your belt. What have you seen in the process of accessing extraordinary talent? What have you all been noticing in that process of bringing people into the company? And is there anything that you wish would be better or different as it relates to that part of the business?
Well, you lucked out. This week, again, in healthcare, we're in ambulatory clinic settings primarily. And one of the roles that is center and key to that are our medical assistants. And once a month, I report to our senior leadership team just some metrics. And one of the things I think has really improved. We look at our retention rate. So who have we hired during this fiscal year and who remains? And we're at 94% retention. That
Nice.
tells me we are making great hires. We're not doing what some orgs have done in the past. And I would say we're probably aren't free from having done it ourselves, hiring from warm bodies. I don't want the team stressed out. We just got to hire. We're not assess
Mm,
fit and skill set. Well, that also burns out your tenured team members who are like, we gotta go through this interview process again. I just was training this person for 30 days and they're gone. So for me, that statistic is important. Understanding that our frontline team members are as important. I came from a much larger health system where I led clinics. And one of the things our CEO said there really made it a point. He knew just about everyone's name. And I used to say I supported in the HR space, the environmental services team. And they would say things like, oh, I'm just housekeeping. I'm just a housekeeper. And I reminded them there's not one position in a health system that's not important. So we could have the best surgeon in the OR. But if the room is not cleaned appropriately, the patient's not going to make it. If our general inpatient rooms aren't clean, a patient who's recovering can get infection there.
yeah.
Y'all are infection preventionists. Like, don't ever discount yourself by title. It's super important to understand your value. And again, aligning your passion with your purpose. Is this something you are passionate about? Yes, I love keeping people safe. Then stop saying you are just anything.
Love that. And I love the empowering message. I had an opportunity. I was in HIT some point in my career, and the product that we built, and man, this is probably 15 years ago. The product that we built would send pagers to nurses and doctors anytime they took the blood test. It went through the HL7 data stream, and then I don't even know if it's called HL7 anymore, but they pulled out these markers. And if you had MRSA or something that was contagious, we would send messages out to everybody. Like that was the whole business was around that. And I remember working with infection prevention, and I was like, they're so knowledgeable about everything. And I remember that being a great time in my career of actually going deep in the technology. So I could appreciate that term and all that they do. So you infection preventist or the term, we appreciate what you all do.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's kind of pull the layer back. I'm going to go the other way, which is, has there been situations in which you had to either let someone go or the company just had to decide that we're no longer going to have the resources or use this particular department, or maybe there's a merger and you have two people doing the same thing and then you have to cut that out. I'd love to see, what did that look like for you? What experiences have you seen? Have you talked to people who've been in that space, and what comes up when we think about those things?
Talk specifically about someone that I had to early in my career, that I had to involuntarily separate. And the interesting thing is I was at the manager level, so very new. I always chuckled because when I was a manager, I thought I have got to know everything. I had to know the answer to every question. I'd be seen incompetent. How will I ever make it to director, senior director, continuing up the ladder if I don't know everything?
Mm,
And I made a horrible, horrible hiring decision, and it had ripple effects. It impacted a team for 8 months
mhm,
prior to me making the decision, and I can look back on that now and say, "That was ego." I knew at the person's 45-day mark that they weren't a fit, but I was so afraid of, what will the other leaders think? I can make this person successful. Well, I'm here to
mm.
tell you, leaders, hire slow and let go quick. And I'm not saying that
Wow.
flippant. I'm just saying the ripple effects, the credibility that our HR team lost in that space, the ripple effect of the team members that person interacted with, it made miserable. And then the team didn't trust me. They were like, "This lady has to see what's going on," which I did to some extent, and I'm coaching, but the behavior's not changing.
Mm,
And the unfortunate part was it was my ego. It was the chasing that title. There was no joy or alignment, not in letting the person go, right? That's never joyful. But sometime after I let that individual go, a month or two later, they called me back and said, "Thank you." They actually hated it there for 8 months. You know what I mean? And I think, man, what a
all
different
that time.
outcome that would have been. But for 8 months, I suffered. Our teams we supported suffered. And again, my own ego really putting those titles first. I don't want to be seen as not competent. I don't want people to think I can't make decisions. And it is one of the cornerstone and key things that has been with me for the last at a minimum 10 years. Accountability is important to me. It is the foundation. I will be the first one, regardless of my title, to say I got it wrong. I'm wrong. I apologize. Please tell me more. And I
Mm,
think back then I wasn't going to take accountability. I needed to be right.
mm.
I needed to make that person successful in spite of making everyone else miserable.
Wow. I think it may have saw it as an opportunity to show what you can do, but sometimes you have to kind of step back.
I couldn't do.
So listen, this is very deep, right? We have October sharing a very true and situation in which she allowed her ego to kind of take over and it resulted in some pain. I wanted to also throw something in here. My company that I specifically focus on, I asked you about the TA stuff because I am curious of, how do you know that you have the right person? Because 45 days for some companies may still be a lot of time to wait to determine if you got a good hire or not. And so, what do you do up front? And I know that that was initial, right? That was you just starting out. But now, when you review a candidate to determine whether they will be a good fit, and let's go maybe senior manager, director level, what are you looking for in those regards for those roles?
I would say we have a core competency, right? You're looking for someone who can lead teams, empower teams, likely some financial acumen, just the general core, table scraps. These are the things I think I need to at least have an awareness, probably a little more than beginner to understand at that level. But what I always challenge my leaders with is looking for diversity.
Mm,
So finding the right fit, right? The technical skills are great and they're definitely important and you want to interview for that. But you have to look at what's the total makeup of my team? What's the skill set that's missing? I know what I am strong at. I've been told. I recognize it. I don't hire more Octobers, then we're gonna have gaps somewhere and things are gonna be missing. Like I am not naturally excited about attention to detail. I am the one that will plan the engagement event. We're gonna have a petting zoo and clowns and all the things. And I did this before in one of my previous lives. And then it's like, that event next week. Did you call the petting zoo to get that? No, I forgot. Did you rinse the dunk tank? No.
you're like the details.
I
I
want the
need.
high. I need someone that can come in and say, "Oh, is that your vision? Now I love this part." So I like to challenge folks to not look for one set of something, assess who's on your team, who will complement you, who's going to complement someone else on your team. That's where I think collaboration and the strongest teams come from. Not everyone is the same. Everyone brings a different value that sums it up as the whole. So if you get too many of anything, you likely have gaps and blind spots that you're not aware of, and you're not being the best team to support whatever function you're in that you could be.
And I am going to wrap up there. This has been amazing. Thank you for giving us your time, really peeling back the onion and just talking from the perspective as a human talking to a human. And I absolutely love that You were generally honest about, what it looks like from the inside. I think that a lot of people can take information from that and really understand where you're coming from. So, y'all, if you want to connect with October, I know that her information will be in the show notes. And in addition to that, if you wanted to connect with me or my company, Reference Me, which focuses on outplacement services as well as intake services. Well, I'm Gerald Gordon, and until next time, see you later.
Thank you.